Hey there, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and we got Olivia Rodrigo, we have Hozier, we got Future and Metro Boomin, and more, and this, it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. So this is my 10th year of this series. There's a very real possibility that this is the busiest week that I have ever had. Not just the album bomb from Future and Metro Boomin for We Don't Trust You that had a lot of top 20 impact, but also the deluxe tracks from Guts by Olivia Rodrigo, plus that Hozier EP charting against all odds, plus even more. That many new songs unleashes havoc on the Hot 100, where I'm honestly not sure what's gonna last come next week. And with the lingering UMG TikTok controversy, it's hard for me to make any consistent predictions, especially because we likely have a Beyonce album bomb coming next week for Cowboy Carter. But alright, let's not waste time. The episode's gonna be long as hell as it is. The top 10. We're debuting at number 1. We got Like That by Future and Metro Boomin featuring Kendrick Lamar. Let's make this clear. Future and Metro Boomin broke through pretty much just exclusively on monstrous streaming. But the few that got the highest, they also had some sales, and this was the big one. Closely followed by Type Shit by Future Metro Boomin featuring Travis Scott and Playboi Carti at number 2, and well, really that one just had streaming. Then we had Beautiful Things by Benson Boone at number 3, and I would feel bad for him to be so thoroughly blocked if the song wasn't terrible. There was a bit of a sales push, the radio is strong, and outside of new debuts, he would have won probably based on his streaming. Hell, it was enough to beat that 1 week from Lose Control by Teddy Swims, which fell back to number 4 as the streaming slid back and radio growth seems to be slowing a little bit. But this takes us to our next debut in the top 10, and one that I did not see coming at all, Too Sweet by Hozier at number 5. We'll talk a lot more about Hosier's revival later on, but between the streams and sales, this is Hosier's best performing song since Take Me to Church a decade ago. It's mind-blowing how well it's performing, especially as right behind it we got more Future and Metro Boomin with Cinderella featuring Travis Scott at number 6. Now this puts Lovin' On Me by Jack Harlow at number 7 in a bit of an odd place. Streaming's in the tank, radio is falling fast, he's gonna lose positions anyway. The question will be how much of this downward momentum actually picks up. But then we got still more Future and Metro Boomin with We Don't Trust You at number 8, and Young Metro with The Weeknd at number 9. Look, this is the most I've liked a Future album in years. I'm a little bit stunned that it's doing so well on the charts, but I think at the moment I can kind of appreciate being along for the ride. And finally, We Can't Be Friends, Wait For Your Love by Ariana Grande slid hard to number 10. She's got traction in every channel. I just don't think any radio growth is gonna beat out what Future and Metro brought to bear, especially on streams. Now this takes us to our losers and dropouts, and my god, there is a lot to the ladder. If you wanted a purge of the Hot 100 of a lot of older songs, this is gonna be what does it. Let's list off the big ones that clinched their year-end list positions for 2024. Vampire by Olivia Rodrigo, Pretty Little Poison by Warren Zevers, Save Me by Jelly Roll and Lainey Wilson, What Was I Made For by Billie Eilish, and from Morgan Wallen, both Thinking About Me and Last Night are finally gone, thank God. And not for nothing, this also had the impact of wiping away a lot of minor hits that may never recover. Fiend by Travis Scott and Playboi Carti, Harley Quinn by Fuerza Regida and Marshmello, Perro Negro by Bad Bunny and Fide, Murder on the Dance Floor by Sophie Ellis-Bextor, Nena by 21 Savage, Travis Scott, and well, what do you know, Metro Boomin. And from Peso Pluma, Belakeo with Anita, and Igual Que Un Angel with Kali Uchis. Now moving on to our losers. Oh great, over a third of the Hot 100, and I kind of need to call out all of them because we're gonna need some sort of level set by the end of all this. So the only song that survived off the debut was Enough Miami by Cardi B at 44, and in the list of all the gains that were lost, we got End of Beginning by Dijo at 21, Never Lose Me by Flo Milli at 29, Selfish by Justin Timberlake at 46, Get In With Me by Boss Man D-Lo at 63, Bandit by Don Toliver at 77, and Tucson Too Late by Jordan Davis at 97. Then let's get to the continued losses, which, okay, outside of Act 2 Day to Date by Forbats and Drake at 31, they're all pretty much from Ariana Grande. The Boy Is Mine at 60, Yes and at 61, Supernatural at 80, Bye at 86, and Eternal Sunshine at 87. And for the rest, well, Dua Lipa saw losses for Houdini at 42 and Training Season at 71. Nicki Minaj saw losses for Everybody with Lil Uzi Vert at 66 and FTCU at 82. And Javi lost momentum with La Diabla at 56 and La Victima at 96. Then working from the bottom up. Home by Good Neighbors at 95, You Broke My Heart by Drake at 94, One Call by Rich Amiri at 92, Spin You Round by Morgan Wallen at 91, Sensational by Chris Brown, DeVito, and Lil J at 89, Breathe by Yeet at 85, I Can Feel It by Kane Brown at 84, Where It Ends by Bailey Zimmerman at 79, and Surround Sound by Jid, 21 Savage, and Baby Tate at 78. Finally, One of the Girls by The Weeknd, Jenny, and Lily Rose Depp at 74. Mama's House by Thomas Rhett and Morgan Wallen at 68. Soak City Do It by 310 Baby at 64. Wildflowers and Wild Horses by Lainey Wilson at 59. X's by Tate McRae at 57. Wild Ones by Jesse Murph and Jelly Roll at 55. Yeah Glow by Glorilla hit 49. Is It Over Now by Taylor Swift at 47. Paint the Town Red by Doja Cat at 43. And Truck Bed by Hardy at 39. Now thankfully, we have no returns. The only gain we have is Gotta Only by Floyd Menor and Chris MJ for some ungodly reason at 83. But again, story here, the album bomb from Future and Metro Boomin. It absolutely qualifies for my rules surrounding discussing the best, the worst, and the top 20. Outside of those, well, working from the bottom up, we got Where My Twin at 62, Seen It All at 54, What the Fuck You Mean at 52, Ain't No Love at 41, GTA at 40, Everyday Hustle with Rick Ross at 38, Running Out of Time at 36, Fried She a Vibe at 33, Magic, Don Juan, Princess Diana at 27, and Claustrophobic at 24. But that still leaves a metric ton of new arrivals because, of course, neither Olivia Rodrigo or Hosier fell under my album bomb rules. We got over 20 new songs to get through. So with all that, number 99, Girl I've Always Been by Olivia Rodrigo.
I get down with crooked men, but I am the girl I've always been.
I'll admit to being a little bit surprised that the deluxe re-release of Guts has performed as well as it has, but I also have heard a lot of really positive reception, even from the folks who were more lukewarm on Guts last year, so I did have some high hopes for the song, and I'll be damned if this was a pretty fun introduction. The warm acoustic strumming and the brighter cymbals that anchor Olivia Rodrigo playing to a slightly huskier delivery in this playful kiss-off, it's got the vibe of a campfire song. And while Rodrigo certainly gets to vamp on the second verse, you can tell this has the feel of a bit of a looser throwaway. I get why it might be a bonus cut. That being said, I actually really like the observations of the guy she portrays in this song, where you watch the manipulative side slide from the tears to just plain anger as they keep trying to gaslight Rodrigo and saying that she's changed when she really hasn't. Maybe they just didn't really know her that well. Now the song feels a bit short for my taste. A bridge really could have kicked this up a notch, but otherwise, it's fun. Nice stuff. Number 98, Empire Now by Hosier.
100 years from the Empire Now.
Look, I'm frankly floored that we got as many Hosier songs to chart this week as we did. Yes, it's only 3. That's 3 more than I expected. So, starting off with this, I'll give it to Hosier. It does tap into some of the darkness that I wish filled out more of his last album. The heavier, bluesy twang of the guitars and the ominous bass line. Even before that pre-chorus adds in this warping effect that almost reminds me a little of dubstep, slamming into a hand clap as the strings will swell up. It reminds me a lot of some of the blues rock that predated Hosier in the early 2010s. And while he can command it effectively, let's be real, this is perilously close to commercial core. And I gotta say, it's a frustrating observation about a song rooted in reflecting on Ireland's century of freedom from the British Empire, and how imperial forces of all types should be resisted. There's real hope for a better world despite it all if you do. Now, I wish there was a more pronounced groove to this, but for the cinematic scale and style of the song, I think it's pretty effective, and Hosier's a strong enough singer to make this work. Really good song. Give it a shot. Number 93, Best For Me by Joyner Lucas and Jelly Roll.
In your empty space, tell me, is it really love? If you have to ask if they'll stay.
I remember when I thought Joyner Lucas had a real chance of crossing over as a rapper in the late 2010s. I've made a conscious effort to avoid covering him since then, mostly because the quality went off a cliff, but I did hear that this new song actually had some quality. Apparently not really a return to form, because according to those I know who still follow him, the album behind it was another train wreck, but this did have me curious. And okay, on some level, I think I understand what Joyner Lucas is attempting here. A return to the distinctly flawed back and forth of perspectives, this time from someone watching a friend struggle with drug addiction, and the other from said addict really struggling to get clean and bucking against the person who's preaching at him. And okay, look, the frustrating thing with Joyner Lucas is that the shallow moralism of the story never takes that next step. And here it feels like a very individualized narrative, where there's more focus on hurt feelings and two friends talking past each other than getting to the deeper roots of addiction. The collapse of the friendship is the emotional core. It's effective. And there are some traces about how religion and just pure willpower will get wrapped up in sobriety programs, but a little bit more detailed, it's more grounded, could make this really go over the top. And it's kind of a shame because the rest of the song is really pretty rough. The pedal steel accenting the thicker clatter of drums, it's nice, but Jelly Roll's hook is not good. He's in this mewling register that doesn't carry any grit. And it's a weird choice because you'd think as someone who had lived this life, you'd think he'd want to accentuate the passion, and it's just not here. So okay, by Joyner Lucas standards, this is one of the better songs he's made in a long ass time, but I'm sorry, outside of the context, just okay. At best. Number 90, Scared of My Guitar by Olivia Rodrigo.
If I play it, then I'll think too hard once you let the thought in, then it's already done. So I'll lay in your arms and pretend that it's love.
You know, I wish I liked Rodrigo's spare ballads more than I do. It's not that they're bad, but some of the awkward edges in her writing can be more obvious with the spare instrumentation, and thus with this, I'm kind of floored by how great this song is. I mean, it's just spare acoustics accenting the piano with a little bit of arranged strings on the bridge, and Rodrigo mostly underplays until a couple belted moments that maybe could have been reined in, but the song really takes its time to actually accentuate those emotions. And it's the lyrics that are the real standout. Stuck in a relationship where it's easy, but the fire's going out, and she's second-guessing because maybe it's a problem with her. Hell, she can't help but blame herself. The guy's done nothing wrong, but it's not love. And the fear that she'll never find something better, or that it's good enough, is what kind of keeps it going. But she can't lie about it in her art. And that's the quaking fear she can't escape what she knows is really true. The other unfortunate side of being the confessional artist is that sometimes you wind up creating something and it reveals a lot that you don't even initially realize. The implication scares the shit out of you. If you can't tell, I've actually been in circumstances similar to this before. The song kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. I mean, it's the sort of maturity of which we've only seen glimpses from Olivia Rodrigo, and thus I think it's one of her absolute best. If there is a reason to check out this re-release, I think it's this. Fantastic song. Number 88, Wildflower and Barley by Hozier and Allison Russell.
Useful stuff for my body to
So here's a collab that intrigued me. For those of you who don't know, Allison Russell is a Canadian folk artist who's been seeing some real traction in the Americana scene in the 2020s, especially for her sophomore album, The Returner, last year that netted her a Grammy and coincidentally featured Hozier on its closing track. And after they toured together, I should not be surprised that they cut this. It's actually a song that Hozier apparently wrote back in 2020, and you can kind of tell. It's got a winsome, contemplative vibe, looking at the empty, fallow fields, looking for new crops to be sown and bring new life out of the earth. And that translates with the bird song around the spare acoustics that open up into the more textured percussion and the thicker rumble of bass, where the harmonies between them actually feel pretty natural. I'm just not that wowed by this. It's very earthy, it's very pastoral, certainly very pleasant, but it doesn't really do much beyond that vibe, especially lyrically, and I was hoping for a little bit more. It's not bad at all, just doesn't feel that special to me. That's all. Number 75, Stranger by Olivia Rodrigo.
Sure, now you're just a stranger. I know everything about You're just a stranger I know everything about.
Okay, 2 songs in, she set a pretty high bar for herself. I was excited for this, and I'll admit, a bit more lightweight, but there's a lot of warm acoustic bounce that had me wondering where the hell Dan Nigro's been hiding this side of his production the past couple of years. But again, Rodrigo is showing more maturity post-breakup, and the sheer relief and joy of having actually finally moved on properly. The heartbreak has mended. There's a part of her life tied to the relationship that she does remember fondly, but ultimately, the guy's just a stranger she knew everything about for a time. And now it's time to move forward. And there's a part of me that just really likes how breezy and borderline conversational a song like this is. She can make songs feel immense, but she's also got a knack for some of those smaller scenes and the sense of detail and subtler emotions that I think deserve as much attention. And this has a lot of charm, especially as the reverb, electric guitar, and percussion really flesh out the background. It's a little twee, to be sure, but you know what? This was fun. I like this a lot too. Check it out. Number 73, Corazon de Piedra by Javi. Look, I do feel bad for Javi. It feels like he's working uphill due to the UMG TikTok nonsense, even with all the momentum he has. And he's got at least one song I kind of like thus far. I had hopes for this. And man, there is some whiplash in listening to the acoustic riffs that has some charm and songwriting with maturity from Olivia Rodrigo, and then coming to this, where the rattling guitar and bass careen off of Javi dumping all over this girl who left him. I mean, he's clearly over her. He's already deleted her number and photos from his phone, and there are of course plenty of women lining up to take her place, until we get to the final hook where he admits that he always loved her. She never really understood that. Maybe good luck going forward? I'm sorry, the emotional swing that he's trying to pull off after a pretty obnoxious song, it's kind of questionable, and I don't think the delivery ever fully sells it. The rattling guitar twang is way too bright and prominent, never really changes up. The vocals feel very shoved back, and that bass scallop at the end seems to set up the change, but we never get it. Now look, it's far from the worst regional Mexican song I've heard. I mean, stay tuned for later in this list. I still think Javi's got a lot of promise. This doesn't quite stick the landing. Can't say I'm into it. Number 72, Punteria by Shakira and Cardi B. So here's something funny. I got a request on social media to review the new Shakira album with this comment. No, it's not good. Can you please cover it anyway? I mean, kind of a shame. I really like Shakira, but it's not a good way to get me to care about a new album if even the fans don't think it works. But hey, she teamed up with Cardi B. That means the Cardi B album rollout has to be in full swing. There's got to be potential, right? Well, yes and no. With that pulsating compressed groove and the big buzzy synths, it's got the feel of someone trying to make a new disco song in like 2011, or playing to one of the pop crossovers that Doja Cat was making 3 years ago. And not exactly a high quality one either, as the lyrics, when translated, feel pretty lightweight and disposable for a love song, especially Cardi's verse, which feels very forgettable. Now, where I will give credit is that Cardi B is surprisingly fluent in Spanish. I'm always a little bit surprised she doesn't dip into that well more often, and her singing, it's at least passable alongside Shakira, and they actually have decent chemistry. I think where this falls a lot shorter for me is that the song's not funnier or weirder. Both of them have the capacity to make this a lot more interesting, but quite frankly, we got decades of Shakira collabs that are rarely as interesting as they should be, so it's not exactly surprising either. I mean, it's not bad, but it should be a lot better. Number 70, I Like the Way You Kiss Me by Artemis.
Not trying to be romantic, I'll hit it from the back just so you don't get attached.
So one thing that's gone somewhat overlooked with the UMG TikTok feud is that with the right circumstances and marketing, there are opportunities for independent acts to jump into the mix with TikTok virality, and of course it's always a little bit of a crapshoot, but if you can take advantage of the diminished competition right now, it's probably worth an effort. Hence we've got Artemis, an English singer-songwriter who dropped his self-released debut tape earlier in the year and then had, well, this, which wasn't on it. And I'll be honest, I'm a little little bit shocked that it's this sound that crossed over, because with that pulsating low-end 80s synth and the reverb snarling guitars and the grainy master, it sounds like something I would find on Bandcamp in the vein of Corinne or House of Harm than on the charts in 2024. Now granted, it's an extremely slapdash version of that throwback synth pop. The vocal mixing in particular feels very filmy, and the lyrics are rough, giving me the vibe of a trashy fuckboy rap song where he's gonna hit it and quit it, and her attraction to him more satiates the ego. But the tempo is fast enough, I can imagine this working alongside some of the modern variants of this sound. And the lyrical style, it might be contemporary enough for the mainstream crossover, but that's the rub for me. I've actually heard this done a lot better, and this Rex Orange County wannabe trying to sell me darkwave, it's not winning me over. I've heard the legitimate article. I mean, if you want stuff like this, go check out Corinne. Their album Tear last year was excellent. This, I say don't bother. Number 69, La People 2 by Peso Pluma, Tito Double P, and Joel de la P.
No me detuve y no disimulé, solo hice mi deber.
So I liked Peso Pluma's debut album last year more than I thought I would. The regional Mexican sound still isn't really my thing, and I don't know how much longevity it's going to contribute to across the Hot 100 this year, but he showcased a breadth of sound and mostly improved production. It gave me the impression he might actually have some staying power, especially as his label backing appears to let him keep UMG at arm's length, at least for the moment. So this appears to be a sequel song from that last album, and I did not like the original one at all. And whoa, I don't like this at all either. Why did the horns sound so gutless and filmy and yet right at the front of the mix, where the accordion tries to add some foundation to the very brittle acoustics, and it feels like the production's got no body at all. It's distracting to the point where I almost can't even hear the squawking vocals all about drug trafficking that really do not amount to much. I have no idea why Peso Pluma thinks this content flatters his skill set. It really doesn't. So yeah, as a whole, this feels like a very underproduced step backwards. I don't like this at all. Skip it. Number 58, So American by Olivia Rodrigo.
American, oh God, I'm gonna marry him if he keeps this shit off. I might just be in love.
Okay, only 2 more Olivia Rodrigo songs before we get the wave of Future and Metro Boomin. Thus far, the record's really in her favor here. Really has me questioning why these weren't on the album proper, but you never know. Now here, I'm a little less impressed. The pulsating bass line, frenetic drums, and gauzy reverb guitars reminds me a lot of rather conventional modern indie rock, and Rodrigo is a good fit for it, but I also know she's got the ability to give her guitars more muscle. This feels distractingly thin. And the lyrics don't exactly do much for me either, being anxiously head over heels for her new English boyfriend, with a couple of quippy observations that she's so American compared to him. You can tell this is a track that is gonna run on pure momentum rather than substance or content. I mean, it's decent. Rodrigo's got the energy to sell this sort of love-struck exuberance. You can tell she cares. And the rougher vocal pickup does help the vibe, but overall, even this week, she's done better. Number 45, Slow It Down by Benson Boone.
Let me hold you now. Let me slow it down.
Alright, we gotta deal with this. Look, I don't like Beautiful Things at all. I'm willing to argue that a significant portion of its success is the lack of tangible competition from UMG-affiliated acts. The last thing I want to see is more songs of his get traction. And with this, okay, let's deal with the elephant in the room right now. I don't know why Benson Boone's producers are letting his screechy voice hang so unsupported and compressed in the middle of the mix. Doubling down on a comparison to Lucas Graham should be the last thing that he wants. Now, this doesn't have the excruciating hook of Beautiful Things, thank God, but the fact that he spends the entire hook here in that forced falsetto with only that spare staccato organ, it's not helping. But by the time we get the increased arranged bombast coming on that outro, yeah, I get it. Man, somebody wants to be Harry Styles a lot. Then we have the content, which, okay, it's marginally better. He meets someone in the big city chasing dreams that really aren't going according to plan, and she's more inexperienced in love and she's falling for him. He wants to help her slow it down, get more comfortable with the experience. I don't know why he thought his over-the-top screaming would be the best mechanism for that, but then on the second verse he reveals he's just as insecure and overthinking of everything as she is, and they can get through all this together. Okay, look, I don't care for Benson Boone. I think this song's pretty bad as well, but the more I've heard from this guy, the more I get the impression that some industry hacks around him are doing him no favors, and quite frankly, that might include his production team. And given that his album is actually dropping this Friday, yikes, could get ugly. All I'm saying. Number 20, Slimed In by Future and Metro Boomin.
Slimed in. Niggas ain't no slime shit. All my hoes from Thailand. Whole no nigga got a water wrist. All my hoes in a wide body. Pick my hoe up in a wide body.
Okay, the majority of the remaining songs here are from Future and Metro Boomin. I've already reviewed the album on my main channel. This episode is going to run really long as it is. I'm going to try and breeze through these as quick as I can. Thank God Future really isn't known much for in the way of content. Now, this was never one of my favorites on the album, with the wispy melody lingering behind the thicker trap rumble and the chalky hi-hats, and Future defaults to a lot of brand name bragging and only a few passing shots at Drake. When you recognize on this album that any reference to sick or dead dogs or dogs at all is about Drake, the lines about stealing all your hoes get a little bit more pointed in his direction, even if Future's got lines about chaining her and training her that don't help matters. I mean, this is one of the songs after that pure amazing opening stretch of the project where I was more lukewarm until running out of time. With this, take it or leave it. Number 14, Obsessed by Olivia Rodrigo.
Sleep on my side of your bed, and I can feel it. I'm staring at her like I wanna get her, and I remember every detail you ever told me. So be careful, baby.
The last Olivia Rodrigo song, the one that seems to be intended as that late single, where Rodrigo makes the sharper decision to double down on darker, noisier guitars and a stalking bass line as she stares daggers at her partner's ex-girlfriend, where she lets all that insecure jealousy just consume the song. Now, to Rodrigo's credit, she actually understands how messy all of this is, from the social media stalking to the borderline homoeroticism. She knows it's all a very bad look and just can't get out of her own way. And none of this feels like glorification so much as creeping dread. Bad Idea Right nailed the head rush of the moral ambiguity. This is explicitly Rodrigo playing the heel. And that's fine. She can play that slightly unstable Stepford smile. We knew that going back to Good For You. But I just wouldn't really put this among her best, especially amidst the context of more refined writing on the other deluxe cuts thus far, where she could have had a little more with this, or at least delivered a hook as great as Good For You. As it is, it looks like this is getting the push that Get Her Back probably should have received, and you know what, that's a shame. This is fine, she's just done better. Number 13, Ice Attack by Future and Metro Boomin.
Having cheese, now these niggas never rest. I've been drinking codeine, started rocking evil get. I can feel this money power, got these niggas so upset.
You know, I think the story behind this song might be a little better than the actual track. A portion of this actually originated in sessions with Drake and Metro Boomin going back years, with the leaks going back to 2022. And thus it's got a bit of a feel like a bait and switch, where the funereal trap opener and flexing takes a sharp and sour turn into a rumbling trap banger. Now, I don't think the flexing's much to write home about beyond some increasingly aggressive sex references, to quote, going banoodles on the dog ass-o, which I think Future expected banoodles to be more of a thing than it's been. But the darker intensity does raise this to at least be okay. It's not my favorite, but I was never all that invested in this particular leak finally getting released. I know a lot of others will be way more hyped for it. Good for them. Number 9, Young Metro by Future and Metro Boomin featuring The Weeknd.
I'm hot than a fever, put dope on 1 liters, more stripes than Adidas. I got these regular hoes, I got superstar hoes taking pictures of me like the Fed. Check out my video, little bit of silly hoe got me with $1 million dreary in the bed.
This might be my favorite song on the album, and only partially because Metro Boomin ramps up the ominous gothic bombast with the faster trap percussion and gunshots, where Future switches up his flow and flexing mid-verse and makes it very clear just how much certain people owe to his sound. Yes, also a sub at Drake, and not for nothing, it reminds me a lot of when they worked together in the mid-2010s, which is aged somewhat decently. But where this song hits a different level is out of nowhere on the bridge. You start hearing ad-libs and vocal runs from The Weeknd as the synths rise up and the tension surges with every gunshot. It's almost enough to make you wish The Weeknd himself would contribute more than a couple words, but really, he doesn't need to. Especially in the context of a song between the flexing highlighting what was borrowed from him, and Drake absolutely knows what that is. Coupled with The Weeknd absolutely nailing the vibe of bleak nihilism underscoring the entire song, this is Future's formula working at its best. Absolutely excellent song. And you know what, let's keep up the positive momentum with number 8, We Don't Trust You by Future and Metro Boomin.
I've been in the cold, can feel my toes, but I still stuck to the code. Money won't fold, pockets won't hold enough.
The title track, album opener, and it's when I realized when we were dealing with something else in Future's catalog entirely. The mournful keys, the undisputed truth sample flip that opens into the synth horns, the haunted oily trap whirs, and the blend of venom and bitterness that underscores Future's hook. And that's before he starts unloading jabs on Drake on the second verse. Are they particularly detailed or cutting? Not really, especially as Future mostly continues with the flexing. It's not a focused verse, but I'd argue it still works because of Future's performance and then setting the stage for the reality of this burned friendship where the collapse of trust and goodwill has pushed Drake and Future into opposite corners. And you know what? Future has the money and clout to at least be in the same arena. Now, do I think Drake could probably out-rap Future and probably has mountains of dirt on him? Almost certainly, but between Future's producer connections, his skill with melody, and his complete lack of moral character or anything to lose, that makes him dangerous. And that loaded implication really manifests here. In my opinion, it's pretty great. Another one of my favorites. Check it out. Number 6, Cinderella by Future and Metro Boomin featuring Travis Scott.
High yellow, canary yellow, hot chocolate Cinderella, trap off a track trailer, blue paper stuck together, bad bitch can fuck my business.
You think Travis realizes that by working with Future on this album, he's probably never gonna get a Drake feature ever again, especially given that Travis owes some of his biggest hits to Drake? Now granted, for a flexing track that's mostly absent of any subs, Travis probably didn't think that far ahead. That seems off character for him, especially for a song that really doesn't do that much. The fluttery harp and fizzy percussion around that mournful key before the trap percussion comes in, it's pretty enough. Quite the contrast to Future here, saying that he pisses codeine on the peasants. But by the time we got to Travis's verse amidst all the empty hedonism, I think I actually preferred his Kid Cudi-esque humming ad-libs to anything that he actually said on the song. Couple that with some iffy synth choices on the back half, yeah, gotta say it, didn't really care for this one. Number 5, Too Sweet by Hosier.
My coffee black in my bed at 3. You're too sweet for me. You're too sweet for me.
Look, it's still utterly wild to me that Hosier debuted at number 5 this week. I got no illusions it's gonna last, especially with Beyonce's album bomb coming, but when I was so annoyed last year that David Kushner was getting the push that Hosier properly deserved, I did not expect that Hosier's EP would see some chart penetration when Kushner dropped off the face of the earth. And finally, Hosier decided he'd bring back some goddamn groove with that sinuous bass line and the guitars rising around the bells on that hook. And when I heard that sleazier guitar cut across the post-chorus, even if Hosier was still in his falsetto more than I personally prefer, I was entirely on board. And then for the content, okay, look, it's not fully a return to Hosier's hornier side, but it's in the right ballpark by leaning into Hosier living harder and more reckless and hedonistic. You don't describe someone's mouth like Heaven's Gate if you're not implying oral on just a different level. Now, the conceit that she's just too sweet, it's kind of interesting because it implies someone who lives their life for very easy, middle-of-the-road pleasures that might not have the same bitter complexity complexity, and quite frankly, that's not where he is. And while I could read something into the metatext of a fan base that enjoys the prettier side of Hosier's art, and also got real mad at me when I was wishing Unreal on Earth got more raw and potent, I think there is something to the narrator playing a little bit more dangerous that shows there is a significant chunk of Hosier's audience that really wants some of that nastier side too. So I'm not sure I would put this at the peak of his best songs. He's played this template before, especially on the self-titled debut, and I'll admit there is something about the production that reminds me a little bit too much of some rather conventional 2010s blues rock that became a lot of commercial core, but this is in the right direction. I think it's legit great. Excellent song. Number 2, Type Shit by Future and Metro Boomin, featuring Travis Scott and Playboy Cardi. You know, Future, you didn't have to put Playboy Cardi on this. I'm not surprised you did. It's a streaming cheat code at this point from his audience that will run up the numbers on anything he does. But you already had those bells and that synth from Metro that sounds plenty malevolent behind the crisp trap percussion as those horns will erupt. And that's before Travis Scott delivers one of the better beat switches and crescendos I've heard from him in years. Even if Future's content is just playing to a lot of darker flexing and veiled threats, saying that he can swing all manner of women who look like Meg the Stallion, which to me is another couple subs at Drake given all of his stupid pot shots at her. The end of his verse makes it very clear what's coming if Drake moves against him, and by extension Atlanta at large. And thus with Cardi's verse, no, I'm sorry, the deeper vocal inflection doesn't work. He's got to go back to the original beat, and his flexing's pretty aimless, and some of the lines just feel corny in the wrong way. He doesn't fit the atmosphere at all. On the production alone, this has the potential to be one of my favorites on the album. As it is still quite good. It should be better. And finally, number 1, Like That by Future and Metro Boomin, featuring Kendrick Lamar.
All 24, you won't go, is you like that? Niggas from the bottom really like that. Step in ambulances if you like that. Pop another bottle if you like that.
Whereas paradoxically here, my big objection to this song might be the production. It's grown on me a little bit since the release, especially thanks to when Metro chops it up after that big verse from Kendrick, and I appreciate what he's doing sampling Eazy-E, but that tinny synth horn sample from Rodney O and Joe Cooley against the stalking piano and tinny synths never has really worked. And Future's verse, yeah, it's utterly sleazy, but I think if he wanted to really back up the entire theme of the song, I would have liked more of the subs that we know he was throwing across the album. He didn't have to get out of the way of Kendrick, and the hook is kind of lacking in energy too. But of course, the big story here is that verse from Kendrick Lamar. I was gonna say from out of nowhere, but let's be real. Kendrick's been throwing shots at Drake for about 10 years now, and they've been trading subs ever since. Honestly, to the point, I never thought this beef would properly manifest. And the unfortunate reality is that I don't think it's ever gonna really rev up. Kendrick's shots were predominantly at Drake, with some well-connected internal references hitting both him and his camp, with a few passing J. Cole for the trouble, and that could easily pull Cole in as well, and yet it doesn't look like any responses have come up in the weeks since, especially with Drake's largely humiliating attempts to keep this all on social media and not put pen to paper. Now, this could easily change anytime. The sides are squaring up. J. Cole's in album mode. And independent of TDE, I get the impression that Kendrick's been looking for this fight since Control in 2013. But the fact this went to number 1, the second diss record this year to do so, it gives me the impression that at least the audience wants this fight. You play it safe to your peril. And I could easily expand this conversation for another hour, dissecting the next step that any rapper could make. But again, just been the first round. We haven't yet seen the second. Although with Future and Metro Boomin prepping another project, I expect more is in the cards, at least in terms of shots at Drake. But for this one song, it is good. I just think we need a little bit more to fully judge it. I'm not fully there yet. And that was our extremely long week. Good lord, it's a lot. Thankfully, best and worst fall out very fast. In the latter category, it's going to La People 2 by Peso Pluma, Tito Double P, and Joel Dillapi, with dishonorable mention going to Slow It Down by Benson Boone. Best, You know, I was tempted for a tie between Too Sweet by Hosier and Young Metro by Future and Metro Boomin in the Weekend, but they're tying for honorable mention. Olivia Rodrigo utterly stole the show for me with Scared of My Guitar. That might be one of her best songs and easily her best ballad to date. What a song. Next week, Beyonce's bringing Cowboy Carter. We got a lot more coming, so stay tuned. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse. And I'll see you